In a 2023 survey by the Korea Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training, more than 62% of Korean office workers said they had suppressed a professional opinion at work to avoid standing out. 62% in a single year. That is not an outlier, that is a pattern. And it raises a question worth asking carefully. What kind of society produces that number? And what does it pay for it? Korea is not a poor country, not an uneducated one, not a politically closed one. Yet something in its institutional architecture, in its schools, its offices, its neighborhoods, still rewards sameness and penalizes difference. Understanding why that is takes us back further than most people expect. Start with the schools. According to Statistics Korea, Korean students average more than 13 hours per day in combined school and private tutoring time by high school. Among the longest in the OECD, the curriculum is largely standardized, and the university entrance exam, the Sunung, funnels every student toward a single national ranking. Move into the workplace. The OECD's 2022 Employment Outlook found Korean workers average over 1,900 hours per year, one of the highest figures in the developed world. A 2022 survey by job platform Saramin found that nearly 58% of Korean employees felt pressure to dress, speak, and even style their hair in ways that matched workplace norms. And on mental health, the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency reported that social isolation and fear of social judgment ranked among the top 3 self-reported stressors for adults under 40 in 2022. The numbers are not incidental, they describe a system. The roots are layered. Confucian social philosophy, emphasizing hierarchy, collective harmony, and respect for group consensus, arrived in Korea more than 6 centuries ago and was institutionalized during the Joseon dynasty. It rewarded deference and penalized disruption. Then came Japanese colonial rule from 1910 to 1945, which imposed rigid bureaucratic uniformity across education and administration. After the Korean War, the developmental state model of the 1960s and 70s under Park Chung-hee deliberately built corporate and educational structures around discipline and standardization. Conformity was productivity. Researchers at Seoul National University have documented how these 3 historical waves compounded one another rather than canceling out. The result was a society where institutions were designed, quite deliberately, to produce interchangeable outputs, whether that meant students, soldiers, or factory workers. The logic made sense for rapid industrialization. It built one of the fastest-growing economies in the 20th century. The question was always what it would cost once that phase ended. The costs are now being tallied in public. Korea's fertility rate fell to 0.72 in 2023, the lowest ever recorded for any country, according to Statistics Korea. Demographers at the Korea Development Institute have linked this directly to the exhausting cost of raising a child inside a high-conformity system where every educational and social benchmark must be met. Youth unemployment among Koreans aged 15 to 29 has remained stubbornly elevated, partly because the job market still filters heavily on credential uniformity rather than skills. The OECD's 2023 Better Life Index ranked Korea near the bottom of developed nations for work-life balance. And in a 2022 national survey by the National Mental Health Center of Korea, over 36% of adults in their 20s and 30s reported clinically significant levels of anxiety tied to social comparison and fear of judgment. A society optimized for sameness, it turns out, generates enormous private suffering, most of it silent. Korea's uniformity culture is not a story about one country being unusual. It is a story about what happens when institutions optimized for one era fail to adapt to the next. Every society that industrialized rapidly made versions of this bargain. Suppress individual difference, maximize collective output. Most of them are still paying the invoice. What makes Korea's case instructive is the speed and transparency of the reckoning. The fertility data, the mental health data, the emigration trends among young Koreans. All of it is visible, measurable, and publicly debated. That is not a sign of failure. That is a sign of a society beginning to ask the right questions. The real lesson may be this. Collective discipline can build extraordinary things. But the moment a society's greatest challenge becomes innovation rather than replication, the cost of conformity stops being an externality and starts being the central problem. Korea is not unique in facing that crossroads. It is simply among the first to face it this sharply.